Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from the Paycom Center where the Lakers lost 136 to 120 in a game that they collectively decided to go for. They were in the game. They were winning in the fourth quarter with 7:40 left. They were up 108 to 107 when Luka Doncic was assessed his second technical foul for apparently saying something in the direction of the nearby referee JT Orr, although Luka claims that he was talking to a fan in the crowd. The fan in the crowd confirmed that Luka was talking to him. And the Lakers teammates on the floor all said that is what they saw. And despite that, Luka was assessed a second technical foul. He was ejected at that 7:40 mark. And again, the Lakers were up 108-107. They were outscored 29-12 the rest of the way. JT Orr was also the ref who assessed both technicals on Luka, a technical on Vando, a flagrant on Vando, and let's just say some questionable calls in the fourth quarter. And you guys know, for those who've been listening to me for a while, I rarely go after the refereeing. I rarely use that as an excuse or as a point of criticism in terms of the result of a game. Tonight is an exception. I thought that was egregious, that was ridiculous, and it spoiled what up to that point had been one of the best games of the season between arguably the two best teams in the Western Conference, two teams that could face off with the way the standings are looking in the Western Conference Finals. This was essentially a Western Conference Finals preview, in my opinion, at least, with the way things are trending. And it got completely undone by some ridiculous decision-making by the referee crew in the fourth quarter, particularly JT Orr. It became personal, and he told Luka that he couldn't talk to him moving forward, and that he would only talk to other Lakers players. So it clearly became some type of personal situation, which I understand. Look, I get it. I see how much Luka can talk to the refs and berate them at times, and that can grind. Everybody's human, but you have to have a certain level of professionalism and just understanding of the situation. And as refs will attest to, as players will attest to, like when a player has a fifth foul or one technical, the bar to eject them, to give them that sixth foul, especially when they're a superstar, which obviously Luka is, that should be higher than, like, it's supposed to be higher. It often is higher, and you will see Draymond gets the first technical. He's puffing his chest out. He's doing whatever he wants. He doesn't get the ejection. Or a star picks up their fifth foul. They can, they got to be careful. It's not like an obvious foul, but they can be a little bit more physical and initiate contact. They won't get ejected. And tonight, it was just like, it was such an awesome game up to that point. And who knows which way it would have gone. I think with the way that the momentum had shifted, the Lakers were probably going to win that game. But even if they didn't, like, just let the players decide that. Let them figure it out. And even the first technical, I thought was a bit ridiculous. And I'll get more into it. I just had to get that off my chest. I thought, again, I try to refrain from criticizing the refs or using that as some type of crutch or excuse. Tonight, it was undeniable. It was just very obvious what happened, and just that the way that impacted the game. And so I wanted to have my cold open, talk about that before we get into it a little bit more later, and then get into the rest of the game. But you guys know the drill. Before we get started, for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate you all for staying up. I know I ended up going a little bit later, but it's still relatively early, at least compared to the average Lakers home game. So Buha's big picture tonight is the Lakers can beat the Thunder. And that is my big takeaway from the game and 3/4 and 4 minutes that we saw these two teams play each other in OKC, with the Thunder basically full strength. They're missing Jalen Williams, their backup center, who is a solid rotation player and I think could help them in this matchup, but not one of their like top 7 or necessarily even 8 players. Lakers were missing Rui tonight, and I think that was a big absence, and I think it really affected them throughout the course of the game, but especially in the first quarter and first half, because it just changed the rotations. And DFS started, then Vando took that DFS role. Vando had a really rough first shift, and then it kind of took JJ a bit to go back to him. But from that point on, from his second shift on, Vando was incredible. Vando had maybe his best game of the season. And that's, again, factoring in like how rough the first shift was. But one of the better, and again, arguably the best game of the season for Jared Vanderbilt. And I think he that's maybe just like a side note that's maybe one of the most encouraging things from this is Vando did some really good things in this matchup, and with his defensive capabilities and the rebounding in smaller lineups and also playing some bigger lineups. He played a bit next to Jackson in the third quarter, and that was really impactful. That is something that if the Lakers can find a way to study that and make sure that if they do face OKC, that they can find ways to replicate that. I think that was one really encouraging part of this. But really missed Rui tonight. But even that aside, they continued the incredible shooting that they had in OKC on Sunday. Tonight made 18 3-pointers, didn't make a 3 in the fourth. And I wonder how much of that had to do with Luka being ejected, because theoretically Luka's Luka. He had 3 threes tonight. He probably hits at least one over the final 8 minutes. And with the way that he runs the offense, he generates a lot of open 3-point looks. So I would also assume that he would have generated at least another 1 or 2. So Lakers could have had another night where they hit 20 plus threes. They matched their first half total from Sunday with 15 in the first half. But this was a really high level game on both sides. I thought the Thunder had some really good adjustments. I thought you saw, especially with Luka, but to a lesser extent Austin, they did a really good job of fighting over screens and really testing the Lakers screeners. I thought the Lakers screening was a bit subpar tonight, at least on the ball. I thought Jackson still was solid. I thought Vando struggled with his screening on the ball. And in general, I thought their screening was not where it needs to be. And that's probably something that they have to look at on film and adjust. But what OKC was doing was they were fighting over and just not conceding the switch. And after conceding so many switches in the last matchup and allowing Luka and AR and LeBron to target hunt, to mismatch hunt, to pick on Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren and some of their smaller defenders, Kason Wallace, Isaiah Joe, and Aaron Wiggins, they did a much better job of fighting over the screens and playing coverage. And then also in some instances, they were scram switching, where basically another defender, often a smaller defender, was coming up and switching spots with the big man. And then that player would be taking the assignment onto Luka, onto Austin, onto LeBron. So I thought that was a smart adjustment by OKC, and they did a better job of countering the Lakers' ball screens. Lakers still had a lot of success in them anyway, because Luka, doesn't matter. I mean, he was scoring on Dort. He scored on Dort several times. Like Luka's just a one of a kind. But I thought like that was a smart adjustment on OKC's part. I thought OKC did a better job of pushing the ball, getting out in transition, getting out in early offense, and really putting pressure on the Lakers defense. And then again, not having Rui, I thought affected the Lakers defensive versatility and size, and just some of the lineups that they were using. But the Lakers, the shot making, the shot generation, OKC continued to sell out and struggle to close out to Dorian Finney-Smith, Gabe Vincent, Austin, like whoever was off the ball in the corners, weak side, Lakers did a really good job of running certain actions to get those guys wide open and compromise the OKC defense. So my big picture takeaway from all of this is I think I thought the Lakers matched up solidly with OKC before these two games. So there's an element of confirmation bias to be sure, but it's hard to deny after watching what happened Sunday and what happened even tonight when OKC gave their best punch. Like Shea was bringing, like they were treating this like a must-win game, and I thought you could tell there was a different level of intensity and energy and focus from the OKC side. And no matter how many haymakers they threw at the Lakers absorbed them and they responded, and they had their own, haymakers that they threw back at OKC. So that was what made this game so fun. Again, it just was so disappointing to have it end the way it did, because it felt like both teams just kept hitting each other in the face, and they were going into round 12, and it just, it got undone again. So I think my takeaway is, like, OKC really struggled with LeBron, Austin, and Luka. I think those guys in a 7-game series are going to be a handful for them. Now, on the Lakers side, SGA had an amazing game, 42 points. I thought he generated a lot of good shots and just a lot of over the top shot making, which it's hard to defend. And that's what makes a guy like SGA so difficult to contain. And those types of like a guy like a Kevin Durant or a Kobe or a T-Mac or whatever, like those guys, when they are just pulling up and taking jumpers, contested jumpers, in the mid range, like Melo, like there's just not much you can do. But when they're cooking, like SGA was tonight, Lou Dort hit 5 threes. I think that was a bit fluky, though. He is a solid shooter. I think he's better than his reputation, and he had a lot of wide open looks. Though he did hit a couple of contested ones. J-Dub went off 26 points. I thought he was much more aggressive and assertive tonight. But I think that my big thing, again, is that the Lakers can hang with the Thunder. I think there's a lot of encouraging things from tonight's game, and LA did this without Rui. I think with Rui, that changes everything. And one thing I've noticed too is that, and I was talking about this with Kobe Price of the Southern California News Group, who's been multi-time guest on Buha's block, that one of the interesting, like, because we were trying to figure out, like, why is the starting lineup better defensively with Rui compared to DFS, and we kind of saw it tonight. One thing that they do when DFS is in there compared to when Rui's in there is they will put DFS as the point of attack defender, often on the guard, the primary ball handler. And what that does is it then puts Austin on the back line. Whereas when Rui's out there, more often than not, they're putting Austin as the point of attack guy, and Rui is the guy on the back line, making those rotations, being a big body, boxing out, etc. So I feel like because they have more confidence in DFS as a point of attack guy, as a perimeter defender, they will entrust in him more when he's out there in the starting group. But I think it has a ripple effect that, in my opinion, is kind of negative, because it ends up with Austin sometimes being in those help situations where I would rather have Rui there or DFS there in that case rather than an Austin. And so I think that's something that the Lakers need to think about moving forward. Is like, I thought, getting off to that start that they did on Sunday, it was Austin on Shea and Rui as the helper and the low man sometimes. And tonight, again, it was the opposite with DFS as the primary guy on Shea and Austin sometimes in those situations. So I think that's a simple tweak that the Lakers can make moving forward. But again, I think there's a lot to be encouraged by from the Lakers side. I would throw away the final 740. The Lakers kind of unraveled texts, flagrants, complaining, turnovers. It just was a rampage by OKC at that point. But I think it's hard to quantify the impact of your best or second best player getting ejected on what you felt was a ridiculous ejection, and feeling like the ref crew what was against you, and having, in my opinion, a case that at least one of the refs what was blatantly against you in a very odd and, in my opinion, unprofessional way. Notable performers tonight. Start with Luka, pre-ejection, 23 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 7 of 15 shooting, 3 of 7 on threes, 6 of 7 at the free throw line, 3 turnovers. LA was +6 with Luka on the floor in a game that they lost by 16. So in the 17 minutes Luka was off the floor, they were outscored by 22 points. LeBron had 28 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 6 turnovers, 8 of 19 shooting, 3 of 6 on threes, 9 of 10 at the free throw line. Really rough start. I think he started the game like 1 for 6, had multiple turnovers. So it was a subpar start for LeBron, but I thought second half, especially in the beginning of the third quarter, he started to get downhill. He started making threes. I think he was pretty engaged defensively for the most part anyway. But I thought his jumper, it was kind of like late second quarter. He hit that 3 and then carried over into the second half. And then I thought he had a much better second half. Austin had the hot start where he had 18 points early, like into the early portion of the second quarter. Didn't score for a while. Then in the fourth quarter, got to the free throw line a few times, drawing fouls on OKC defenders. But he finished with 24 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 8 of 12. 8 of 12? No, 6 of 12 shooting. Then DFS at 12 points. He had a hot start, hit 3 threes in the first, and then hit 1 more 3. But he kind of cooled off a bit. Jackson, the numbers don't really stand out, but 7 points, 6 rebounds, 2 offensive. Both were, I want to say putback. I think both were putback dunks, if I'm not mistaken. Or one was a putback dunk. I know he had a trailing dunk, but a couple of big offensive rebounds for Jackson. Also had a couple of assists in the short roll, a couple blocks, and I thought Jackson helped. Like, remember, he played 13 minutes in the game on Sunday. Tonight he played 27. I think that was partly because no Rui, but I thought Jackson really brought it. And after struggling, I would say a bit the last couple of weeks in terms of really like just putting even the on-court stuff aside, like clearly not having the trust of the coaching staff in some of these bigger matchups, literally bigger against big teams, but also important games against good teams. Jackson's been often in the teens in terms of minutes. And tonight, again, partly no Rui, he got a bigger opportunity, and I thought he made the most of it. And I think his numbers don't quite reflect the impact that he had. Off the bench, I mentioned Vando, 8 points, 12 rebounds, nearly had the double-double, just went 2 for 4 at the free throw line. He makes both. He gets to 10 points, an assist, 2 blocks. Did have 3 turnovers, and I think with him, there continue to be some times in the paint where he gets stripped, or just sometimes defenses will force him into certain decisions. And he is, as I've said many times, like an underrated playmaker and passer, but sometimes the decision-making there can be a bit problematic. However, he was incredible tonight. And again, I thought had a rough first shift, and JJ went away from him for a bit longer, then came in, and he was everywhere. He was making plays offensively. He was grabbing every rebound. He had 8 offensive rebounds. I didn't even see that number until right now. I knew he had several, but 8 is just a monster number. That is like he was keeping so many possessions alive, especially in that third quarter. So again, might have been, I would contend it probably was Jared Vanderbilt's best game of the season, or at least in that conversation. Gabe, quiet night offensively, 5 points, 2 of 7 shooting. Then Jordan Goodwin, 6 points, 4 rebounds. I thought he was like solid in his role. He did hit a couple threes, and then Dalton played 14 minutes, 3 points. I thought I had some rough defensive sequences, especially in the beginning of the fourth quarter. And there was a couple of his shifts where Luka was out to start the fourth. Dalton had like a rough 2 minutes. JJ immediately pulled him for Luka, and then that was ultimately what would led to that situation transpiring. In terms of stat of the night, there's so many things you could look at, but for me, it's just you could look at the +6 with Luka on the floor, or to me, it's LA was up by 1 with 7:40 left, 29-12 from that point on. So we will never know how this game would have unfolded had Luka not gotten ejected. Then takeaway number one was going to be an inexcusable ending to an otherwise great game. I kind of talked about it at the top. Again, like it was disappointing to see just because of how like the high level shot making, the execution, the chess matches, both teams adjusting. OKC coming out with a few haymakers and their adjustments, then LA countering to that. OKC having the 8-point lead at halftime, LA rallying in the third and then taking their own lead going into the fourth. And then, like them trading baskets to start the fourth. And it just feeling like this high level, like it felt like a game 5 of a playoff series or at least the game 2. And then it just gets completely like momentum killed. OKC gets, the technical free throws, and then there's another tech on Vando. The other thing with the first tech on Luka that was also, I thought, like, because when the first tech on Luka, he was defending Vando because Vando got hit. They don't call it. Then Vando is chirping with the ref down the floor. And when I heard the whistle, I thought the tech was on Vando. And I was like, oh, Vando just picked up a tech because he's been complaining because he got fouled and they didn't call it and he's upset. And Vando can sometimes, I mean, Lakers, I will say, are not a fun team to officiate. They are always on the refs. So that is like the one thing I will defend. If I was a ref, I wouldn't exactly love the Lakers. You got JJ, depends on the game, depends on what's going on. But like, LeBron, Luka, Austin, Vando, Jackson, they got guys who will be on the refs. But that aside, like I thought Vando picked up the tech. Luka gets the tech, and then I'm like, I didn't even see Luka say anything. But then Luka goes over to Vando and he's like whispering something, covering his mouth to tell him something. And I'm like, okay, well, Luka got a tech for like standing up for his teammate. He was defending the possession and Vando's frustration. Like it's almost admirable in a way, right? Like him picking up a tech to defend his guy. Then, it actually ends up costing him later because then he gets this tech that he shouldn't have gotten. And as he said after the game, he never has had a fan thrown out. He likes to engage in the back and forth with fans. And apparently this fan last postseason, when Dallas was playing OKC, was giving Luka a hard time. And like they kind of developed a back and forth of like going at each other. And we know like Luka thrives off that, right? And he's chirping with fans all the time. And it's largely in a playful banter, manner. And it just, I guess wrong place, wrong time in terms of where the ref was stationed when he issued that barb at the fan. But still, again, and you could tell like sometimes body language can play a part of this, right? You could tell like immediately all 4 Lakers like beeline to the ref. We're getting in his face and we're defending Luka. And then he was kind of like frazzled and he was like back up. And I think there was a moment there where he realized he messed up and then he was just like doubling down like, no, he's out. And the Lakers already used their challenge, and I'm not quite sure on challenging with techs, like how that works, but that, I mean, just again, egregious is the word of the show. It was an egregious ejection and it undermined an otherwise awesome game. Takeaway number 2 for me is look ahead to Luka's return. So Lakers play Dallas tomorrow. And the thinking going into this game actually was that the Lakers were potentially going to rest some of their guys to make sure that they were prepared and energized and healthy and rested for tomorrow's game in Dallas because it's going to be such a big game. And they collectively decided like, no, we want to win out. We want to get the number 3 seed. We want to like go into the playoffs with momentum, with rhythm. So there was, I believe, 5 guys who were all questionable. Luka, LeBron, Austin, DFS, and Gabe. They all decided to play. And I thought that was admirable. And on one hand, like it is a relative, like, NBA players decided to play, right? Like that's a low bar. But I think given the context of everything, given the way the game has shifted with load management and these performance staffs really prioritizing health, and performance staffs hate back-to-backs like that like like really, there's been, they've done studies and different things on like players should not physically play in back-to-backs. Like if it was up to the performance and medical staffs, no player would play in a back-to-back. Like it might just be 8 guys play on one day, 7 guys play the next day. Like they do not want you playing in back-to-backs in general, even if you're healthy. And so I think there's a little bit of that going on, but the Lakers decide to play. They decide to go for it. They ultimately don't get the win, but now they shift their focus to tomorrow in Dallas and what it promises to be an emotional game for Luka. He said as much after the game. He was asked about his emotions entering it, and he said, on the one hand, like, I'm excited. I'm excited to go back to Dallas. I'm excited to see the fans. I'm excited to see my ex-teammates. I'm excited to be in the building and the city. But then he was also like, it's also just like weird and a lot of emotions, and I'm not sure how I feel, how it's going to be. Then he was also asked if he feels any sense of closure, or if he thinks he will have closure going back to Dallas and finally being there for the first time since being traded and being in the arena, seeing everybody. And he said he's not sure. And like he's been very transparent about the impact this whole situation has had on him, and not being over it and not having that closure. So I think tomorrow's game promises to be very emotional. It's weird because LeBron talked about this, because we asked LeBron about, he's had his version of these games, right? Where he goes back to Cleveland after leaving for Miami. He goes back to Miami after leaving for Cleveland. He goes back to Cleveland after leaving for LA. And he said it's never quite been, maybe that second time going back to Cleveland because they had won the championship, and he had come back a second time, it was a bit different. But like, especially that first time going back to Cleveland after going to Miami, like the fans were upset, right? They had the signs and the booing, and I forgot if they were even like throwing stuff or whatever, but it was a very hostile environment. And Luka is coming back to like, it's almost like a funeral vibe, but like they're like happy to see him. It's like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's gonna be like a weird. They're almost cheering for him and the Lakers, and it's anti Mavericks and anti Nico Harrison and the Dumonts and Adelsons, and it's just gonna be an interesting environment to see like what that's like, because like are they cheering? I'm sure they'll cheer. Like they're obviously going to cheer for Luka. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a video tribute, though. Based on how Dallas has botched every step of this rollout post Luka trade, I would be I would be stunned if they didn't have some type of video tribute or way to honor Luka. Like they should, and I think they will. But if they didn't, I wouldn't be like completely shocked or stunned based on, again, how poorly they've handled this whole situation. But that aside, like, I think the fans will be cheering for him. That they'll be welcoming him and happy he's back. But it's like, are they going to be cheering when he's making baskets? Or are they going to be cheering for the Lakers? Like, how are they going to show? And I haven't been as plugged into the Dallas side or like what the fans are doing. Obviously, they're still protesting and they've been canceling season tickets and they're still upset. But I'm really interested to see like how that dynamic goes tomorrow. But it's putting even like the Luka part aside for a second, like it's a huge game for the Lakers because LA needs to go 2-1 here down the stretch to secure the number 3 seed. And maybe even if they lose this game, they can still go 2-1 because then they got Houston at home. Houston clinched the number 2 seed with the Lakers losing tonight. And then they got at Portland. But I would be that surprised if Houston is just like, we want to stay in a certain rhythm. We're going to play our guys against the Lakers, or at least play them in the first half, like see how the first half goes. And then like Ime Udoka is a competitor and he wants smoke with everybody. I wouldn't be that surprised if they go for that game. And then Portland, they might just be tanking that game and going for a draft pick, but like they could be just trying to spoil the Lakers seeding. So I think tomorrow is a, I don't want to say a must win because that feels a little too dramatic, but it's close to a must win, and it would give them a big sigh of relief if they can win tomorrow. Support Luka, help him get the win against his former team in his former city, but also get one of the 2 wins that they need to close out the season. And then you just have to win one of the final 2 and you lock up the 3 seed. I still think the Lakers are going to be the 3 seed. I still think they're going to lock it up either way, but it is a big game for a variety of reasons. I'm also interested to see how they respond to tonight's adversity, because there was one of 2 ways this game could have gone once Luka got ejected. And for a moment there, it looked like maybe the Lakers were going to rally around it. And we've seen this group rally around adversity at obviously various points this season, but like there was an unraveling in the fourth quarter. And I think understandably so, with a lot of the frustration, but with the tech on Vando and the flagrant on Vando, and Austin had the foul on I believe it was Kason Wallace in transition. And you could tell the Lakers it was getting chippy. The Lakers were losing their composure. And again, I think there's a universe where they make this a bit more competitive down the stretch, and they weren't able to, and they just kind of got, again, understandably emotional, but emotional nonetheless. And so we'll see if that carries over into tomorrow's game, because tomorrow's game promises to be emotional on some level, and they're going to want to win it for Luka. But regardless of that, like, tomorrow's game is important. And even if there was no Luka component, they would still be close to needing to win this game. So that is what I'm going to be, just a lot to monitor tomorrow. It's going to be a big game. I got a big story coming off of it, of, talk to Luka about some things and talk to some fans and Lakers people about different things. But so that'll be something for those of you who subscribe to The Athletic to check out once that drops coming off of the game. But really big game tomorrow for the Lakers. And then takeaway number 3, this one will be brief, but we've got some movement in the standings, and I will pull up the standings for you guys right here for those on YouTube. 1 second. So looking at the West standings, with the way that some of the games went tonight, Clippers won. The Warriors also won. The Grizzlies won. Scary situation with Jalen Wells. It seems to be he's ultimately going to be okay, but obviously a very scary fall, scary situation. And it seems like for now the only thing was a broken wrist, which is unfortunate. He's a starter, big piece for Memphis. And then Minnesota lost, which now sets up a fascinating dynamic here. The standings, where the standings just shifted dramatically. Clippers went up to number 4. Denver dropped to number 5. The Warriors remain at number 6, so that would be the Lakers' first round opponent. Memphis is at 7, and then the Timberwolves are at 8, which, if that holds, I think Minnesota would beat Memphis in a 7-8, even without home court, and drop Memphis to 8. But that sets up a really tough first round series potentially between Houston and Memphis. I mean, Houston and Minnesota, but between 2 and 7, and then OKC they'll probably sweep Memphis or maybe 5-game series. But then you have Lakers Warriors, which I think would be a really tough series, and then Clippers Nuggets in round 1. And I want to update something. So a lot of things, a lot of madness today. Nuggets fired Mike Malone, not Michael. And they also fired their GM, Calvin Booth. That's what latest coach has been fired in a season since 1981. I mean, I don't know if a GM has ever been fired this late into a season, at least for a playoff team. Maybe for like a lottery team, but for a playoff team, I can't recall a GM getting fired this late into a season. So I've officially changed my rankings that I did with Sean Davis yesterday on Buha's block. So my new rankings for best to worst first round matchup for the Lakers. 1 is still Memphis. I still think that even Denver going through this disarray, like Memphis is going through their own disarray of they fired their coach. Ja continues to get fined and deal with stuff. They just lost Jalen Wells, who was their starter, and I thought arguably their best defensive wing. That's a big loss, and it's unclear how long he's going to be out for, but broken wrist. I mean, theoretically, that it's going to be at least a few weeks, but we'll see. But I still have Memphis 1. I have Denver 2 now. I have Minnesota 3. I have the Clippers 4, and I have the Warriors 5. So I ended up moving Denver from 4 to 2, Minnesota from 2 to 3, Clippers from 3 to 4. So that is my updated ranking from best to worst matchup for the Lakers. 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. And of course, right now, the Lakers are set to play Golden State in round 1 because that's how these things go. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. I see we got a bunch of questions. First one from Mint Millions. What a disgrace with the refs and everything. 100% agree. It was, again, I've now said this 3 times. I rarely go after the refs, if ever. I rarely go after a ref by name. I think this is the first time I've gone after a ref by name this season. And JT Orr, just inexcusable disaster class of a really second half, but especially fourth quarter. G Mercado, like JT, horrible. I like to play on words there, but yeah, he was horrible. Dotune, thank you for the super chat. I don't give a F what Luka said to whoever, as long as we continue to watch Draymond do way worse and still finish games. I don't care. They're both league stars. I mean, it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. Like it is, Draymond gets away with borderline, not literal murder, but like borderline murder. And it's almost like the refs get afraid of him. And he can just walk around and kind of do whatever he wants and not be assessed anything. Like not be assessed a foul, let alone a technical or a flagrant or an ejection. And yeah, there seems to be a double standard. Marley, thank you for the super chat. OKC threw a hell of a punch tonight offensively, and we were still up 1 before the ref decided the outcome. OKC didn't prove much on their home court, on their home floor twice. Look, I will say, like, I thought the OKC's punches tonight were certainly much stronger than Sunday. And I think this would be a 6 or 7 game series. And I think it would be a really fun series. I think it would probably be the best series in the West of any potential matchup. And I think that there was a sense from a lot of people outside of Lakerland entering these 2 games that the Thunder are this juggernaut and they can't be beaten, and they would beat the Lakers in 5 or whatever. And it's like, no, I think that the Lakers are legit. I think that the biggest thing for me overall, aside from just thinking that I think they match up fairly well with the Thunder, is like, I think the Lakers defense looks back. And I know the first half was rough and they gave up 136 points, but they allowed 99 on Sunday. And I think there were stretches of this game where they defended at a high level, especially in the third quarter. And like they've shown a level of defense recently that I've talked about on here several times. I wasn't sure if they could get it back or when they would get it back. And their defense had been very bad coming out of LeBron and Rui returning from injuries, but it is now bounced back with the Houston game and last game against OKC and parts of tonight. So I think the defense is headed in the right direction. The offense is ascending and hitting astronomical levels. They are dictating the terms of engagement with opponents, which I think is really important. So I'm with you. Like I don't want to completely discount OKC, and I think at this point, for me, it would be like a coin flip series. It would be a really tough one to predict and project. But I mean, I've said before, the only team I would pick ahead of the Lakers in a series in the West is OKC. And I would really have to think about it and break certain things down and rewatch both games and look at the numbers and everything. But I mean, if I favor OKC, it's more like a 51-49 than anything. And I might even favor LA 51-49. I really have to think about it. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be encouraged by on the Lakers side. Jazz Singh, everyone knows what happened this game. Give me OKC in the Western Conference Finals. Luka going for MJ scoring record. Haven't had a LeBron takeover game in a while. Not afraid. I think the last point especially is a key. Like I don't think the Lakers should be afraid of them. And I don't think they were. And I think actually one of the things kind of working against OKC is they just don't strike fear in opponents. And I think, and this isn't me talking, this is like players talking. And it's not just in the Lakers locker room, it is in other locker rooms, because other people have talked about this publicly or reported on it or whatever. Like teams just don't really fear OKC. And there's other teams that are higher than them, despite them having the best record in the league in terms of fear factor. And I don't know if it's the youth. I don't know if it's because they do the group interviews after the games and they look like a bunch of college kids hanging out together, or like they're just not very intimidating and like forceful or whatnot. But they just don't strike fear in opponents. And you can still be a great team and still win the championship. And like, I don't know if the 2015 Warriors necessarily struck fear in opponents at that time. Like maybe a little bit of Draymond doing something, but like I think once they got KD, it went to a different level, or just like they were unbeatable. But there are teams that don't necessarily strike that fear. And that first year, there was a lot of skepticism about Golden State winning, and maybe that's the type of year that OKC ends up having. Where I mean, remember Memphis gave Golden State a real scare. They were up 2-1 in going into Game 4, and Golden State was on the ropes, and then they did the Andrew Bogut on Tony Allen adjustment and shifted that series. So OKC is going to be tested, and teams, again, I just don't think fear them. And you don't have to be feared to win the championship or go far, but it is certainly a psychological element that can be an advantage to you if you are feared. And that's just something that I think is kind of working against them. But I don't think the Lakers are afraid at all about OKC. And even comparing that to, I think there was some fear with Denver the last couple of series, especially after the first series. Like last year going into the playoffs, I think some guys in that locker room were afraid of Denver. That's not the case with this OKC series. So that is a key difference and a key reason why. Of course, always like talent, skill, that stuff will dictate who wins. But there is always a mental and psychological component to all these things. And I think LA does not fear them. And that, again, doesn't mean they're going to win the series, but I think it gives them a better chance than, if the circumstances were different. Braden, thank you for the super chat. I'm with you, Brate. I never blame the refs for a loss, but that was horrible. Vando looked great in the second half. Again, great Vando game tonight. I thought he was awesome on both sides of the ball. The offensive rebounding, the finishing. He had several contested finishes. Defensively switching all over the place, wreaking havoc. I thought just a really impactful Vando game, and a sign of what he could do potentially against OKC in a series. And yeah, the refs were not good. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. I've never said before that there's no such thing as a moral victory. I think we just found our first one. Utterly embarrassing for the league. You could look at it that way, and I don't necessarily disagree. I try to refrain from the moral victory talk because I don't think teams ever look at moral victories, but I think there's certainly things to be encouraged by. And if you just judge it off of the first 7 quarters and 4 minutes against OKC over the past couple games, there's a lot to be encouraged by from the Lakers side. So from that perspective, I agree. I think it also can be a learning lesson of like, if this was a playoff game, it's one thing for this to be a regular season game. If this was a playoff game, like everything would be magnified to a different level, right? I think some of the post-game comments, I think maybe JJ's reaction, like everything would have been amplified. But I also think like it would have been on the Lakers to handle it a bit better post Luka ejection, where it's like there's going to be like maybe Luka fouls out. Luka's had several games where he's had 4 or 5 fouls. So maybe Luka LeBron almost never has that many fouls, but like Luka or Vando or Rui or DFS, maybe one of those guys fouls out. And of course, there's varying degrees there in terms of impact of one of those guys fouling out. But like maybe one of those guys fouls out. If we got the ejection, the Lakers need to keep their composure. And that would be like my one thing with this. And I do understand the human element of it, of they felt like it was 6-on-5. Like there was a ref who, because there was another play, Austin drew a foul around the free throw line, and JTR was the closest ref. He didn't call that foul. It was the ref on the other side of the floor behind Austin that called it, and Austin beelined over to JTR and started complaining to him, and JTR was kind of doing his like, don't talk, whatever. So again, it seemed personal. I really don't know how else to categorize it. And again, this is the first time I've ever publicly said I think a ref got personal with a team or a player. I've never said that. I've covered the NBA for 13 years. I've never said that once. So for me to be publicly saying that, there's maybe been some times I've privately thought it, but to like publicly say it is a different, like it's a different level for me at least to get to, where like I just felt this was so egregious, so ridiculous, so blatant that I was like, I cannot come on here and talk to you guys and like not be honest about this, because there's really no other way. And I'm sure OKC fans will have their rationale or like Mark Dagnall after was saying that he agreed with it and that there has to be a line or whatever for how you talk to the refs. And I was like, okay, whatever. That'll be bulletin board material for the Lakers moving forward. But yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Tomorrow's a must-win game. Need 2 wins for the 3 seed. If we lose tomorrow, have to win last 2 games. Too much pressure. Win tomorrow at 1 and win 1 of the final 2. Sure. I mean, I guess you could call it a must-win. Maybe I was chickening out by not saying it's a must-win. Like the only reason I wouldn't label it for me, that there's a high bar to be a must-win. Like a game 7 is a must-win. A game 1 at home, if you have home court, I think is a must-win to really set the tone of the series. I think for me, I have a certain bar for using the term must-win, but I guess by regular season standards, tomorrow is a must-win. I just think like if they do lose, I don't want to overreact and be like, oh, well, the season's over, or like they're not getting the 3 seed. Like they still are in a good position to get the 3 seed. Obviously, if they lose to Houston, then it's a different conversation. And then now we're talking about them potentially dropping, and now maybe they're in the 4-5, and now maybe they're playing OKC in round 2, and that I think they could still win that series, but it does make the path a bit more challenging. So I don't want to get to that point yet because we're not there, but I hear you. Like it is essentially a must win. It feels a little too strong of a term for me, but at this point, like, I mean, really, like they want to win out. They want to win all 3 games, regardless. Like they technically have to go 2-1. They'd love to go 3-0, and I think that's the way they're going to approach it. However, you got to remember, AD tomorrow is going to be on one. AD is going to be that's going to be like it'll be interesting to see how much of the swarming, doubling, and rotating that they've done against Cat and Jokic and some of the defensive game plans that they've had against bigs, how much of that they could do against AD. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. Players being tired, if for whatever reasons, Lakers go 1-2 or even 0-3 remaining 3 games. Can the Lakers still be top 6 or definitely 7th or 8th? I believe Well, they're at 40. So they haven't clinched a top 6 seed yet, because technically if they lost out and went 48 and 34, if the Clippers won twice, if the Nuggets won twice, if the Warriors won twice, or the Grizzlies, if I guess all 4 of those teams would have to win twice and go 2-1 down the stretch here, and all 4 of those teams hit 49 and LA stay at 48. So I believe if the Clippers, Nuggets, Warriors, or Grizzlies, if any one of those 4 loses, LA clinches a top 6 seed, because at worst, no, because I guess they have to lose twice. So LA needs 2 more losses. Excuse me. Let me retract that. LA needs 2 more losses to at least one of those 4 teams, or them winning and then like 1 loss, right? Because if they go 1-2, like let's use Memphis for example, because I think that's maybe the best example. They're 47-32. LA's 48-31. If LA wins 1 and Memphis loses 1, that's LA locks a top 6 spot. So their magic number is 2. Whether they get that from one of these teams losing twice and them not winning again, but one of these 2 teams loses, or they get it from them winning 1 and another team losing, their magic number to lock a top 6 seed in is 2. So I think they're going to get it. I would be very surprised if they don't win at least one of these final 3. And if these other teams don't lose at least 1, if not a couple of their respective games, depending on the team and their schedule. So I think more likely than not, they'll win at least 1, and one of these teams will lose 1. And then that's the magic number. LA locks in a top 6 seed. So I would be, I'll say stunned if LA does not finish with a top 6 seed. That would be pretty surprising. Next one from Harry Chinani. Thank you for the super chat. OKC broke the record today with the most double-digit wins in a season. Need to give them more respect. Look, I think OKC is incredible. I've had them as my finals pick all season. I had them as my finals pick entering the season. I've had Boston over OKC, and I really haven't wavered on that. I think Boston's been playing really good basketball over the past month plus. OKC's been a juggernaut. That they've blown out basically everybody. However, I think that the Lakers have the type of offensive personnel, especially, but also the defensive personnel to match up really well with OKC. And I just think when it comes down to it, Luka and LeBron are too big for their perimeter defenders. And I even think Austin's a bit too shifty. And Austin, I thought, got downhill, generated good looks over the past couple games, and was really effective attacking, because oftentimes like they could only put Dort and J-Dub on Austin if Luka and if one of Luka or LeBron isn't out there. But when all 3 are out there, they can't put both of those guys or even one of those guys on Austin. So with those guys guarding Luka and LeBron, that puts a Shea or a Kason Wallace or an Isaiah Joe or an Aaron Wiggins on Austin. And I think those are all advantageous matchups. Or Caruso, is another one. But they were more so putting him on Luka or putting him on LeBron. But I think unless you have a real like size athleticism advantage on Austin, if you're smaller, if you're just as quick, if you're not that strong, Austin will often win that matchup. Like he's become that good. And I thought he played really well tonight. Went through a bit of a stretch there where he wasn't as involved or effective offensively in the middle portion of the game. But he had the start that kept them in it. And then I thought he did some good things on the 4th. But I'm with you. I think OKC is a really good team. And I know there's going to be a lot of skepticism about them coming off these last couple games. But I think it more so speaks to the Lakers' greatness than any knock against OKC. Jackson, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for all you do, Jovan. What's up with LBJ's bad plus minus? Well, Well, thank you, first of all. Part of it tonight was he was out there during the run in the fourth quarter because it's not just like LeBron had the worst plus minus, but Austin was minus 19. DFS was minus. DFS is always a positive plus minus. He was a minus 13 tonight. Vando was minus 17. Gabe was minus 10. So I think there was that one stretch in the second quarter where OKC went on their big run and LeBron was out there. And I think that partly influenced the initial negative plus minus. And then that just went, it just snowballed in the fourth quarter when they outscored them 29-12 over the final 740. So I wouldn't read too much into it. Like LeBron has had some weird plus minuses, but I also think there's been times where he's in some weird bench units, not even necessarily tonight, but like some of this stuff with plus minus can be fluky. I mean, I think LeBron, as I said earlier, like he had a rough start tonight. That there's no way around it. I think he started like 1 for 6. He had multiple turnovers, some bad passes, some bad decisions, and didn't have quite the same energy I felt like he had on Sunday. But I thought he progressively ramped up throughout the course of the game, had a much better second half, a much more impactful second half, and I wouldn't worry too much about his plus minus. Mint Millions, thank you for the super chat. AR might deserve 40 million a year, probably from other team though. He's getting up there, man. We were having the beat writers went out last night to watch the national championship game, and we were going through the exercise of like team by team. Would you rather have player X or Austin, player X or Austin, player Y or Austin? And there's some names that like I think you might be surprised by that we would take Austin over. And if you look at like for some perspective here, Fred VanVleet is making $42 million. And that's to say nothing of what Bradley Beal is making. But if Fred VanVleet is a $42 million player, now granted it was a bit different CBA and different circumstances a bit. I think things have tightened. Well, I don't even. When did he sign? Was he signed before last year, right? So I guess it was pre the new CBA, maybe as the new CBA was kicking in. Regardless of the timing, like if Fred VanVleet's making 42 million, Austin should be making 40-ish million. That's why I've been saying whenever I've been asked like for a direct figure that, I mean, and this was like 2 months ago, it was probably even pre-Luka trade or around the Luka trade. I was saying 30 plus million. I've since been saying it's probably closer to 35. And I mean, you look at his numbers over his last 15, he's like 25, 5 and 5 with pretty good percentages. Like that's a guy who makes $40 million. So you're right. I agree with you. I think he's going to make now, whether it's with another team or not, I think there's a lot of things that are going to go into it. How the Lakers fare this postseason, how they fare next season, because they're going to offer Austin the extension. I'd be shocked if he signs it for 4 years, 89 million, something like that. Way too low for him. Then he'll opt out in 2026, get a bag, potentially from the Lakers or potentially from another team. But I think depending on how this postseason goes, how next season goes, how next postseason goes, also what happens with LeBron, I think there's a lot of moving parts here in terms of the Lakers and their roster construction. But they love Austin. Brooklyn wanted him for Kyrie. Dallas wanted him for Luka. Like there's been some high level players that have been available that they have refused to include Austin in those trades, in those conversations. So I think at this point, not that they're like completely pot committed and like would keep him under any circumstance, but I think it's close to that. And I think they're going to want to keep him in 2026. So I would not be surprised if he ends up signing that $40+ million deal with the Lakers. And depending on what happens with LeBron and their cap situation, they could, as I've said before, keep Luka, re-sign Austin, and sign another high level 30+ or even potentially $40+ million free agent or acquire one of those guys and then If it's a sign and trade or just a trade into cap space, then like there's certain restrictions with first apron or whatnot, depending on where they are. But in like a general sense, it's possible. So I wouldn't rule out them keeping him and potentially adding another player, or like, again, depending on what happens with LeBron. Philip Pass, thank you for the super chat. What is the protocol when a team is unhappy with a ref? Because I would think that they would not want to see JT in the playoffs. Let's get a win tomorrow. Well, I can tell you they will see JT in the playoffs, because I've covered back in the day when I was covering Chris Paul and the Clippers. He has his beef with Scott Foster, and he saw Scott Foster plenty of times in the playoffs. Like Doc Rivers has had his beefs. I feel like LeBron. Maybe there's a ref. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, JT Orr seems to be, he's going to be on the list for every Laker after this game. They'll probably see him at some point, assuming they do shrink the ref pool after the regular season, and they rate the refs internally, and it's like the best refs get to ref the playoffs. I don't know if they've announced the refereeing playoff roster yet. I would assume he's on it, but I don't know that for sure, for certain. But yeah, they will probably see him again. Now, one thing they can do is complain to the league and try to get Luka's tech rescinded. Because the other thing here is Luka, I don't know how many techs he's at now, but like he isn't that far away from the 16. I want to say, like it might still be a few, but like he's getting up there where only 3 games left, but he's got to be careful here that he doesn't get into a situation where he potentially gets suspended, depending on how many techs I don't know off the top of my head. I believe it's double digits though. So I think it's up there, but yeah, big game tomorrow. Mint Millions, thoughts on Ja's new grenade celly. He just can't help himself. He loves weaponry too much. I guess it's better than a gun just because of his history with guns, but he's playing with fire, and I don't think he's doing himself any favors with the league in terms of how they view him. Bang Charlie says he's at 14 techs. So he's 2 away. I mean, there's 3 games left with Luka. Like Luka's been, as a Laker, he's almost been on like an every other game or like every 3 game type rate. I mean, so if he's at 14, I don't know how many he has as a Laker, but yeah, I mean, it's 16 is the amount. Once you get to 16, you get suspended so if he gets 2 more, he would get suspended. It resets in the playoffs though, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. NBA. Suspension. Okay, so it's up to 16, and once you get your 16th, you get suspended. Then every 2 technical fouls after that, you get suspended. But the tally does reset for the playoffs, so you get suspended after on your 7th technical in the playoffs. So I will say, if the Lakers have a deep playoff run, like Luka could be in the mix with 7 techs. I think he should be able to be okay, but. Madison says, he knows the consequences. He won't pick up another tech. I don't know if I think he'll do a good job of probably refraining in the final 3 games. I mean, look, I'm not a betting person, but if the over under on Luka techs the rest of the season, including the playoffs, is 0.5, I would take the over on that. If it was 1.5, I'd probably take that's just part of Luka's game. He's passionate, and you live with everybody has their the strengths and the weaknesses, the pros and the cons to their game. Luka's is he can run hot a bit, and he gets into it with refs, he gets into it with opponents, he gets into it with the crowd. It also fuels him, and as we saw, especially like I think the Denver game was really the first moment we saw. But when JJ said he wanted the blackout episode, Luka was chirping at the crowd. He was chirping at the Nuggets. He was chirping at the Nuggets bench. He was talking to the refs, and like that got him in his element, and that's when he's at his best. So I think he's gonna get more text to be completely frick. Now, regular season, maybe the final 3 games, he can avoid it. Rolla, Jovan, NBA have recourse against scamming refs. Again, I think it depends on if the Lakers file a complaint, which I would not be surprised if they did. Please do not aggregate that. I don't know that to be certain. I'll probably do some digging on that, but I will. Yeah, I mean, that's really all they could do, but there's no way to prove that. Unless, again, there's like a paper trail of some kind. Like there's. Yeah. Nico Harrison's burner thank you for super chat. Can Bronny be a rotation player next season? I wouldn't entirely rule it out. I would still say that I think the Lakers are likely going to run back most of the roster. I think you could see some type of like, what can you get for Maxi Kleba and a pick and maybe Dalton or something like that? Like, I think there are different things they can explore in terms of offseason options to potentially add a better starting center or a backup center, maybe another wings, like whatever. There's different options there. So I just think if you look at like the current roster, and if we just take Bronny's improvement and say like, okay, he continues to improve and ascend and get better this summer, get better going to next season. I'm just looking at like the current rotation. I'm still not quite sure where he fits in exactly. Like I think there's the starters, right? And then potentially adding a starting center and moving Jackson to the bench. But like for now, let's just say the starters. Then you got DFS, Gabe, Vando, and then 9th man competition, Dalton, Jordan Goodwin, maybe Maxi Kleba, once fully healthy and playing. Could he contend for the 9th man spot? In theory, yeah. But I would say like, I don't think he'll be better than Gabe next season. And even Jordan Goodwin, he's bigger than Bronny. He's a better rebounder than Bronny. I think currently is a better defender than Bronny. Now, because Bronny, I think one of the things that we're starting to see with him is like, I think he has a like far more scoring and off the dribble ability than initially anticipated. And I believe someone made the Scottie Pippen Jr. I forgot who, so I'm sorry, but someone in the chat, it might have been in a super chat even, made the Scottie Pippen Jr. comparison that I really liked. In terms of like what could be not like a ceiling, but like what could be a potential role for him. So maybe if he continues to develop to that level, like him being a secondary or even primary ball handler next to an Austin or next to a LeBron and in certain like bench looks. But I think that's optimistic for next season. I think based on them potentially running it back with largely the same group, I still think he's more of like a 10th, 11th man. And so maybe if someone gets injured, or like if Gabe goes down, Jordan Goodwin goes down, you can talk. But also knowing the Lakers, like they have, with the exception of this, past year, they've rarely ran it back entirely with like basically the whole roster. So there will probably be a change or two that changes the rotation. And I think projecting Bronny as a rotation player is one of the better end outcomes for him. Now, based on his improvement, I don't want to rule it out and say like, I think he's shown a lot of improvement. And so if that continues at the current rate or even at a similar rate, like it could be possible. You don't just drop 39 points in a G League game without having a certain level of skill and talent and production. So I think I would still bet that's probably a little bit more on the optimistic side. I think more likely his third season would be the potential rotation breakout, but it also depends on, like, maybe they end up trading Gabe and trade Gabe and Kleba for someone else, and then they have a hole at backup point guard, and maybe Bronny steps into that backup point guard hole. So I guess that would be a scenario, but like based on the current information that is there and the Lakers likely running it back to an extent, I would say it's more of a long shot for now. Nico Harrison's burner, you think Braun waits until Bryce is in the league? Well, the one thing with Bryce that I'm not sure how much he's going to be playing at U of A, like if he's going, or if he's going to be leaving after 1 year. So that's something that, because if he plays next year and then enters the draft, so that'd be the 2026-27 season, maybe LeBron waits for that. But if he's going to potentially be a multi-year college player and play like a sophomore year, a junior year, maybe all 4 years, like who knows? Probably not, but like you never know. Then that changes that calculation of maybe at most LeBron could wait like a second college year and then play with him that next year. But I would probably bet against it, but I wouldn't feel great if I did. AirPods just died. Let me make sure my audio is all right. Still good. Okay, gonna go. But my famous last words are, I'm gonna go about 5 more minutes here. But I do have an early flight. It is a back-to-back, so I am gonna try and wrap it up. Hans de Leon, who will be the final roster when the postseason comes? I want to be careful with this because I really don't want to get aggregated on it. And so I'm trying to walk this tightrope. As of right now, and this is as of Wednesday, April 9th, 12:50 a.m. Central Time, I think it is trending more toward them probably standing pat, but I would disagree with that personally, and I think they should convert one of the two-way guys, but that's my current read on the situation. I do plan on doing some more digging over the next few days. They would have until Sunday to convert one of the two-way guys, but realistically, they're not saving that much money to the point of like, if you're going to cut Alex Len, like you probably should just do it like now and convert. So, I'm not ruling that out. I still think that's a possibility, but my current read is that it seems to be trending more toward them just keeping the roster as is. But for people looking to aggregate me, please don't. Sky Falcon 5, do you think the Mavs double Luka all game so he doesn't go off? I'm sure they're going to try and limit him, and J Kidd knows him as well as anybody. There's going to be a lot of interesting matchups tomorrow because it's going to be like, I would assume Jackson on AD, but maybe they go Rui on AD and do a lot of fronting and doubling. The thing they got to be careful with is I believe Lively and Gafford are both back. So they're going to have a lob threat there. So you got to be careful with that. Other guy, if you are sending a certain level of attention, that guy doesn't just rim run or cut behind the defense for an easy lob or put back or something. So Dallas has a lot of size, and LA has done well against size lately, but I think Dallas will be a bit more. They don't really have another option. You could downsize a bit, but I feel like they're probably going to play a lot of at least one center, if not a couple together. And by a couple, I guess I mean like 80 at the 4 with Gafford or with Lively. So that's going to be a test for the Lakers on the offensive glass and just in the paint. But then I think LA will try to target some of those guys. But like Lively is very switchy. AD is very switchy, good at playing on the perimeter. So those two in particular, I think like aren't. I mean, you can still hunt them, and Luka is going to make some of those shots, and Austin could probably knife by them and get into the paint. But those are two of the better switchable defensive bigs in the league. And then really good rim protection with AD, Gafford, and Lively. So Dallas is going to be a challenge. Now, I think the biggest thing for them is going to be the offensive end of just they really needed Kyrie, I think, for them to be like close to their potential and be a form. Like, I mean, Dallas with Kyrie, with the state of the West right now, that could be the 4th or 5th best team in the conference. Like, I think they would be in that conversation. But without him, that really compromises their offensive ceiling, in my opinion. And they've also just had a million injuries. But it is like they're a unique team compared to some of the teams that the Lakers have played recently. Even like a Memphis or a Houston, like they're a bit different. So I think their bigs are actually, even compared to OKC, I think their bigs are better with like switching out on the perimeter. So that's going to be its own test. But yeah, I'm sure Jason Kidd will come up with something to try and take the ball to Luka. Since the problem is if you double Luka all game, LeBron and Austin are going to feast. Gabe and DFS and Rui are going to feast. Jackson's going to get dunks. Like you got to pick your poison. And maybe their poison is no Luka and he gets 15, 20 assists, but the Lakers will take that because then they'll win the game. Dun. Thank you for the super chat. Would you trade AR, Rui, MK, GV, 2 unprotected first round picks? Maxi Kleba, 2 unprotected first round picks to get KD for LeBron's last year? Or would you rather play AR $35 million a year to stay with Luka in LeBron's last years? I will say this right now. I'm going to say it. Look at the camera. You can clip me. I would not trade Austin Reeves for Kevin Durant straight up. And that might sound crazy to some. It looks like in the chat, most people are agreeing. But of course, in a vacuum, Kevin Durant is the better, like, of course, in a career perspective, but even this season, like Kevin Durant, I think he's a back end, like 3rd team All NBA candidate. But the track record, the age, the uncertainty, like Austin is 26. He's got a very bright future. He's gotten much better in each of his 4 seasons. KD's a decade older than him. I would not do that. Madison also brings up another good point here because I was looking at it from a like in a vacuum perspective, but this is another good point of they say Madison says I would trade AR for KD if they're both making the same money, but it's the additional pieces we would have to add. So I still wouldn't, but that's another thing here where you'd probably have to add just to get the KD's money. It would probably, I mean, how much is he making off the top? I'm guessing it's in the 50s. He is making 51.2. So to get to 51.2, remember the Lakers are first apron team, so they cannot take back a cent more than they send out. And Phoenix has their own stuff with their financial situation. So this would be even a hard trade to make happen. But let's just say the Lakers can get close and like that works in this hypothetical. I mean, to get to 51.2, that's Austin, Rui, Gabe, Vando, and even that's what 20. I mean, you're basically there. You're actually a little bit above it with those. So maybe you could do Maxi Kleba instead of Vando or Gabe. But I mean that's in theory 3 or 4 of 2 starters, 3 or 4 of your top 8 rotation players. Like, and look, I get KD. KD's a top, in my opinion, 12 player of all time, but the way things have been ending in Golden State and Brooklyn and now Phoenix, there's a lot there that I would not want to touch. Madison says, what about AR for Şengün and Amen Thompson? Now that's a tough question, LOL. Well, I would do that, but Houston would not do that. I mean, Amen Thompson is I think Amen Thompson could be a top 20 or maybe even 15 player in the league at some point. I really like Şengün, but I mean, obviously the money doesn't work with this, but also like, two totally different, or all three are totally different players, but all right. Choco Thunder going 10 minutes already. All right. This is where I'm going to wrap. I appreciate you all so much. I think there was a lot to be encouraged by from the Lakers over the past couple games against the Thunder. I think the shot quality, the shot generation, particularly from Luka and Austin in pick and rolls and off screening actions, the ability for LeBron to take their front court guys off the dribble and like when he has space, just beating them to the spot, getting to the rim. I think that the shot making from DFS, Rui, and Gabe. I think Jackson and Vando's play, especially in the second game. And LA winning the first game by 27 and leading by 1 at the time Luka got ejected. Like, we'll never know. The Thunder could have theoretically gone on the same run that they went on with Luka out there. I don't think that would have happened. I think more realistically, it would have been a very close game until the end, and it would have come down to execution and shot making and just which players made the bigger plays. But we unfortunately did not get that. And we'll never know how the game would have played out. But again, as things were, the second Luka got ejected, or the moment Luka got ejected, the Lakers were up by 1. And from that point on, they got waxed. So I would say, judging by the first 7 quarters in 4 minutes, there's a lot to be encouraged by from a potential Lakers Thunder playoff series. And with the way the standings are trending, we would only see that in the conference finals, which at that point, the Lakers would have a couple series under their belt, a month of momentum. And I think the more I think about it, would potentially be the favorites in that series or slight favorites. But we'll see. We're still a ways away from there. Lakers got 3 regular season games left. Need to go 2-1 to clinch the number 3 seed. Big game tomorrow in Dallas. I will be back after the game to document it all and document what a night for Luka and for the Lakers and for AD and just for everybody involved in this wild trade that happened 9 weeks ago at this point. But that will do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. Those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. I appreciate you all, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.